Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good day to everyone joining us and welcome to today's X-Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Pharmaceutical Serialization, Opportunities in Aggregation in the Future. Today's webinar is part 3 in a 3-part webinar series titled Routes to Address the Real Challenges in Serialization. My name is Sarah and I'll be your X-Talks host for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 30 minutes, and this presentation includes a Q&A session with our speaker. This webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you're involved, so please feel free to submit questions and comments for our speaker throughout the presentation using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. This chat box is located in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you require any assistance, please contact me by sending a message using this chat panel. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. And please note that this event will be recorded and made available for future download. Get more out of today's webinar by downloading the supporting materials available in the Handouts tab of the GoToWebinar control panel. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's event. Catherine Kay is the Operations Director at Aesica Pharmaceuticals. As part of her role, she is responsible for the coordination of the timely implementation of serialization across all of the Aesica packaging sites. Catherine has over 22 years' experience in a variety of roles within the pharmaceutical industry. She gained extensive experience in production operations management and quality assurance from roles at Merck Sharp and Dome and ISA Manufacturing Limited before joining Aesica. Catherine holds a Master's of Chemistry degree and is a qualified person. So without further ado, I'd like to hand control of the presentation over to our speaker. And Catherine, you may start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Sarah, for the kind introduction there. Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome everybody to this webinar on pharmaceutical serialization. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so, I'll cover the background to serialization and also some definitions around aggregation and how that's an enabler to track and trace. I then want to talk about the benefits beyond regulatory compliance, beyond the requirements of the legislation, and then finish with really looking at some future opportunities. Where could this all end up? Where could it go to? And then summarize with some key learnings before the question and answer session. So why are we talking about serialization? Why is it important? Well, at $200 billion annually, fake pharmaceutical drugs make up the largest global counterfeit market. Today, it's estimated that up to 1/3 of the world's prescription drugs are counterfeit, although this figure is closer to 2/3 in some developing countries. Of these drugs, more than half would be classified as life-saving, such as treatments for malaria, tuberculosis, HIV. According to Interpol, more than 1 million people die each year from counterfeit drugs. And therefore, global health authorities are attempting to combat this problem by establishing deadlines for serialization mandates to support identification of these counterfeit medications. So where is the industry now? Well, as you all know, serialization legislation is already in place in countries like Turkey, Brazil, South Korea, and China. It's coming into effect in the US this year and will be a requirement for all prescription drugs in all EU countries by February 2019. Different countries will have their own individual serialization legislation and requirements, and pharmaceutical companies will need to meet the needs of all those that they operate in now and prepare for the future legislations coming into effect. Across the industry, as a CDMO, we're seeing a differing level of preparedness depending on if a pharmaceutical company is already serving in a particular country with legislation in place or not. Since serialization is a complex process, pharmaceutical companies may choose to outsource this capability. Either way, flexible and reliable serialization solutions are required that can be tailored to meet the varying countries' legislation. So how are Aesica meeting this serialization challenge? Well, as a contract development manufacturing partner for not only active pharmaceutical ingredients but also finished dosage forms, we support our pharmaceutical customers to meet their goals, including helping to ensure patient safety and helping to prevent fraud. It was extremely important to us to be able to provide our customers with a serialization solution. So since 2009, we have invested millions in a serialization module that is flexible and scalable. And this module can be adapted to meet varying countries' legislation. Our serialization capability is implemented and fully operational across our business and at all of our packaging sites. Actually, our first production lines first went live in Italy in 2013, so we've been doing serialization for about 4 years now, and we were one of the first CDMOs to have implemented serialization. So let's take a look at the steps of serialization and aggregation. So initially, pharmaceutical packaging required the human readable text of your variable data, so the manufacturing date, expiry date, batch number, to be present on each individual pack. Then came the addition of other product information like the GTIN, the 2D data matrix barcode, initially required by markets such as France. And now there is the requirement of the unique and randomized serial number, what we're talking about now. The next step is aggregation and how this enables track and trace in the future. So what does this mean? Well, traceability is the ability to track and trace products, batches, items through the supply chain from product manufacturing all the way to final retail. To enable this process, further levels of packaging need to be serialized, such as the shipping case and the pallet, and the physical relationship between a case and its serialized content associated. This is what we call aggregation. There is the need to verify a given unique identifier, serial number, on the product and cross-reference with information in the track and trace database at product-related events, such as when the pack is produced, shipped, received, and dispensed, for example. But counterfeit drugs are only one visible symptom of a deeper issue. The distribution network used to bring drugs to us is intensely complex. Products may change hands as many as 10 times on the way to the consumer. So it's this complexity that helps make counterfeiting possible. And it also leads to cumbersome and expensive business processes that only raise the cost of pharmaceutical products for the consumer. Linking item-level serialization with track and trace capabilities can address both the underlying cause and the visible symptoms. So by uniquely identifying and tracking the unit of sale through the supply chain, we can help flag those suspicious products, enable rapid targeted responses to significant events, and automate everyday processes. So this helps you protect your customers and ultimately improve your business. So therefore, the decision to serialize and track products opens up a whole new range of options and can provide value-added benefits for pharmaceutical companies beyond basic compliance. So at this stage, I'd like to hand back to Sarah to introduce a poll question for the audience.
Yeah, that's right, Catherine. We have a poll question for everyone listening and watching this webinar today. And all attendees can vote live on this poll question that's now showing on their screens. And that question is, although the EU legislation does not require this, are you planning to implement a serialization solution with aggregation to the pallet level in order to plan for the future? 3 possible responses here: yes, no, or have not yet decided. So again, that question is, although the EU legislation does not require this, are you planning to implement a serialization solution with aggregation to the pallet level in order to plan for the future? Yes, no, or have not yet decided. And it does look like the majority of our audience has voted today, so let's close the poll and head back into the presentation.
Thanks, Sarah. We'll come to those poll results a little later on in the presentation. So what are those benefits beyond regulatory compliance? Let's look firstly at improved operations. Serialization forces standardization of procedures and eliminates poor practices. Really requires you to clean up your master data and have the discipline to standardize your recipe formats. Improve quality compliance. When serializing at the pack level only, you need to be sure to decommission rejected packs from the line or any in-process control samples that have been taken during the packaging process. However, if you implement aggregation at your site, then the individual serialized packs are read at the aggregation station in the outer shipping case, thereby ensuring all serialization numbers are collated, commissioned at the point of filling the shipper. So this in turn then results in a more efficient reconciliation process of your packs at the end of the packaging run, whereby you're not looking for packs that may or may not have been decommissioned through errors in the manual human scanning process. Also, it helps harmonize processes in manufacturing plants, warehouses, and distribution centers, which helps to streamline your operations overall. You want to keep things simple for your packaging operators and provide them with one standard way of working. Second benefit, improved supply chain management. 3% or $15 billion of pharmaceutical products get returned each year worldwide, and almost all are overcredited. When a product is returned to a manufacturer or wholesaler, they typically refund the current list price, not the original paid price. And since prices can change and products often have a shelf life measured in years, it's difficult to know what was originally paid for any returned item without that item level serialization. So this is especially challenging for wholesalers who have small margins. Poor record keeping and the inability to provide audit trails in reverse logistics create inefficiencies and generate losses from otherwise acceptable products that cannot be redistributed. So the use of aggregation can really reduce the labor costs in returns management, whilst at the same time reducing errors. Pharmaceutical companies are also able to ensure better waste management through a track and trace system. Scanning scrapped or decommissioned products whenever single items are taken out of the supply chain is normally required for a company that uses a track and trace system. The greatest benefit is for the patient, consumer, and quality manager within the company, since flagging every decommissioned product in the track and trace database and offering the corresponding verification services can avoid waste product from re-entering the supply chain and possibly being consumed. Improved inventory management. It's estimated that the average manufacturer holds 10% of sales in safety stock. No one wants to go out of stock of important life-saving drug. And as a result, wholesalers often engage in overbuying. Therefore, every party in the supply chain, down to the retailers, maintains excessive safety stock, tying up capital that could be more productive in other places. Using serialization, inventory records are accurate and updated in real time, providing companies with the confidence needed to reduce their safety stocks. In the future, track and trace systems can also give a pharmaceutical company a competitive advantage. With track and trace, pharmaceutical manufacturers are positioned to establish potentially direct dialogue with their customers and patients, and therefore cut out the middlemen in the complex distribution network, and therefore reduce cost. Improved quality management. Finally, track and trace can help pharmaceutical companies improve recall management. Batches can be recalled for many different reasons, the most common being detection of faulty ingredients within a given batch or perhaps incorrect labeling. Once the affected batch is identified, track and trace helps the manufacturer discover in what storage locations, wholesalers and retailers' stocks the affected batch exists, which otherwise can take a considerable amount of time and effort. Therefore, you can implement faster and partial batch recalls as well as faster version replacement, along with improving your overall audit trail of the product. So in summary, the most common benefits for implementing an integrated track and trace program include avoiding patient consumption of recalled batches, safety stock reductions, accurate returns processing, while also combating counterfeit products that create safety and revenue concerns. So let's just recap on our current multi-layered approach to combat counterfeiting. So we have the bottom layer, the pyramid, product integrity. So the need to make sure that our packaging has some kind of tamper evidence, so it's clear to see if it has been tampered with. Then we have the second layer, product authenticity. So this is where you have covert and overt anti-counterfeiting features. So in this example here on the slide, you can see a hologram on a tamper-evident label. And then the third layer is what we've been talking about, product identification and applying this unique serial code. And so by applying these three layers of approach, increases the safety of your product. But I would really like to pose a question, put this question really out to you. Does the legislation really prevent counterfeit drugs entering the market? There will always be people out there to make counterfeit drugs when there's money to be made, and the most vulnerable are those patients in the developing world who can't afford to buy medicines at the pack level. This raises the question as to whether we need to serialize to the blister level or even to the individual blister pocket. Now, for all you manufacturers out there, I know that's a pretty scary thought, but it is a possibility in the future. Let's look at some estimated core figures for Africa 2020. Estimated population, 1.2 billion. Not enough economic welfare to be able to buy complete SKUs, complete packs of product. 30 to 60% of the drugs are counterfeit. Estimated number of smartphones, 600 million. Could authentication by the patient actually happen? The patient scans their own medicine. Now, these are figures that I've quoted just for Africa. However, this is a similar situation for the likes of India and China. So by taking serialization down to the next level, say the blister strip level, for example, it would provide some added benefits. So, such as that enabling direct-to-patient distribution. So, as I mentioned, the patient doing his or her own authenticity checks. Pharmaceutical companies could also provide information through apps, and then the patient, through a voluntary basis, they can then actually provide information back to that pharmaceutical company. This data then could actually provide possible changes for the supply chain, helping with predictability of the demand, wholesale and pre-wholesale will have less impact on the supply chain in the future. There'll be a lot more of that direct contact, and who knows, in the future there may even be mail delivery services. So there is that changing role of the pharmacist, pharmacist turning into more of a guardian than a distributor. So just some thoughts of where this could go in the future. So before I summarize on our key learnings, I want to come back now to the poll question and the results of that poll question, Sarah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at those. So 58% of the audience today said they've not yet decided whether they want to implement a serialization solution with aggregation to the pallet level. 25% answered yes to this poll question, and 17% answered no. So some interesting answers there. Back over to you.
Great, thanks, Sarah. No, that's really interesting. So 50% not yet decided on how far they'll take the aggregation step, and 25% that have made that decision to do the aggregation. And I suppose that's where really coming to the key learnings. Serialization and aggregation does have a purpose beyond the regulatory compliance. It will bring more than just protection of the industry against counterfeiters. And suppose really, when developing your solution, you just need to look at potentially building in aggregation into your process now. It may be more cost effective to do it now all in one go rather than splitting that up and having to have that time to do extra downtime of your lines and then the extra validation at a later date. So it's really just something to think about. It will bring new business opportunities and it will benefit patients. And thirdly, it will open up opportunities for new distribution models powered by the end user. Pharmaceutical companies can expect the requirements to continue evolving over the next 10+ years. Serialization is not a one-off development. So that's it from me. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that insightful presentation. I'd now like to continue to invite our audience to send in their questions or comments using that questions window for this, which is the Q&A portion of the webinar. And I've already received a few questions, so let's go ahead and get started with those. The first question, why is it so difficult to implement serialization, and why are people so behind?
Okay. Companies need to remember that implementing serialization is a project that affects their whole business. So many times I've heard, it's a packaging project or an IT project. It's not just a packaging line project or an IT project. The end-to-end process needs to be completely integrated with equipment, systems, and processes all interfacing with one another. So this takes time to understand, to design and to implement. So I think that's one of the reasons. Serialized implementations also require significant investment, and I think the big and in some cases the medium-sized pharma companies are probably well on their way. However, for smaller companies, generics, CMOs, probably the hope was that the legislation may be delayed or just not implemented at all. So I suppose they've waited to see where the industry is going, and also what their customers want. So therefore, they kind of are a bit behind in being ready for those all important timelines.
And are Aesica anticipating any delays to the implementation of serialization in the upcoming territories? So, for example, the US or other EU countries?
Certainly, we kind of get intelligence from partners that we work with, and certainly the intelligence we're getting is that there's certainly not going to be any further delays to the timeline set to the US and the EU. It's been made quite clear now by those countries on how we need to proceed. So if you don't have your pack serialized, you won't be able to sell your products in those markets.
Okay, I think we have time for about one more question here. Is it possible to serialize to the blister pack or individual tablet level already? And how does it impact what is required from a technical perspective and level of investment?
Great question, scary question. I mean, absolutely, it is possible. We know that the French hospital unit dose requirement requires each blister pocket to be labeled with batch number and expiry date and have a 2D data matrix on the blister. So there is equipment out there that can do this for us from a technical perspective. Likewise, there's technology available to print barcodes on tablets. The key thing there is making sure that you've got a tablet of a sufficient size to print something and then to read it. So, undertaking serialization to this level can happen, but it would require significant additional cost and just the complexity to manage and control. And ultimately, I suppose the question would go back, who's going to pay for all of this? It is a huge expense.
Well, thank you very much for those answers. We have now reached the end of the question and answer portion of this webinar. If your question wasn't attended to during the Q&A session, the team from Aesica will do their best to follow up with you after the webinar. And if you have any further questions, please direct them to the email now showing on your screen. So that contact email is inquiries@aesica-pharma.com. And this webinar was part 3 in a 3-part webinar series. Parts 1 and 2 are now available on demand through the Aesica and XTalks websites. Well, thank you everyone for participating in today's conference. You will be receiving a follow-up email from XTalks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen, and your participation is appreciated as it will help us to improve our webinars. Now, please join us in thanking our speaker, Catherine Kay, by clicking the link that I've sent to all participants through the chat box. We hope you found this conference informative. Have a great day, everyone.